overview of the book of James. Out of all the epistles in the New Testament, there are only a couple that were written expressly to Jews, and this is one of them. I like to think of the book of James as the New Testament equivalent to the book of Proverbs, extremely practical, written in a Jewish structure, and I'll explain that in just a moment. The practical encouragements in this book are about how faith and works actually cooperate together in the life of someone who's truly redeemed. Remember, one of the most difficult theological elements for Jewish believers was to correctly identify the value and the role of both faith and works. Steeped heavily in Old Testament law, Jewish believers were often trapped into misunderstanding the law as simply a set of moral codes that were separated from faith. As the book of Hebrews showed us, faith has always been central for God's people from the very beginning. But New Testament Jews had sort of lost that element. And James, a Jew himself, the pastor of the church in Jerusalem and the half-brother of Jesus, writes to set the record straight. So the basic theme is faith that works. Faith that works. As I mentioned earlier, the author is James, the half-brother of Jesus. He writes this letters to Jewish Christians who were scattered throughout the Roman Empire. Because of the Jewish nature of this book, it's difficult to describe an outline for our modern Western minds. So please bear with me. Ancient Jewish writings often had a chiastic structure. And that might sound intimidating if you don't know what that is, but let me just explain what it means. I can maybe illustrate it this way. A chiastic structure is, it takes place if we took a paragraph and said it's a chiastic paragraph, if we took the first line in that paragraph and it matched the final concluding line. And then the second line matches the second to last line. And the third line matches the third to last line, and so on. What this does is it highlights something very important, a central core that everything leads up to, and then everything is flowing from. For the book of James, the central core is found in chapter 2, verses 14 through 26, and that's all about how works demonstrate faith, faith that works. That's the central theme. It's the core of the book from which everything leads up to and then everything flows from afterwards. So this letter doesn't flow like other epistles in the New Testament. It uses an incredible structure of communication. And so, like the book of Proverbs, there's so much practical wisdom to go through, and I know that you're going to love it. So let's go through a basic outline. 10 simple points. First, the introduction is chapter 1, verse 1. James identifies himself merely as a servant of God and a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ. And this is coupled, by the way, with the closing portion of the book, because the book concludes with an emphasis on how faithful servants of God pray and how they bring wandering souls back to God. The second section is testing your faith. That's chapter 1, verses 2 through 11. The third section is faith leads to practice. Faith leads to practice. That's chapter 1, verses 19 through 27. The fourth section is a warning, particularly against partiality, chapter 2, verses 1 through 13. The fifth section, this is really the heart of this entire letter, is how works demonstrate faith. Works demonstrate faith. And that's chapter 2, verses 14 to 26. The sixth section is a warning about the tongue, chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. It ties neatly back to the fourth section, which is another warning. The seventh section is godly wisdom. Godly wisdom, that's chapter 3, verses 13 to 18. The eighth section gives more warnings. There's a large section there that runs from chapter 4, verse 1, all the way through chapter 5, verse 6. The ninth section is encouragement to those who are oppressed. Encouragement to those who are oppressed. That's chapter 5, verses 7 through 12. This ties neatly back to the second section of the book, which is all about testing your faith through trials and how that tests your faith. Then the final section of the book is the result of a righteous servant. They pray from a heart of faith. They bring wandering souls back to God. That's chapter 5, verses 13 to 20. So faith is really a central theme throughout the book of James. It's important for these Jewish believers as they seek to follow Christ. And I trust that as you read, you'll find great delight in a treasure trove of practical wisdom, exhortations for your soul. And I trust that you'll be moved by God's Spirit to not only have faith internally, but to live out your faith through every word and deed during your time on earth as a servant of the Most High God. Enjoy your reading through the book of James.